with that, we're about 3 minutes in. Some participants have filtered their way in. Hopefully more will come. But let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Klein. I'm the Director of Media Production for the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. I'm really excited to be here and present our guests to you. Hopefully everybody had a chance to watch the film, What Killed Michael Brown, on our watch page. If not, we will be taking it down from the watch page this evening or tomorrow morning, but the film is publicly available. It's been out for a good bit. So if you go to, I believe it's whatkilledmichaelbrown.com, or if you just Google the film, it's available on Amazon and a large number of other retailers for watching. So with that, we have here Eli Steele. Eli Steele is an award-winning filmmaker. How Jack Became Black was his first film. What Killed Michael Brown is his second film. He's a graduate of Claremont McKenna College and Pepperdine University School of Public Policy. He's the winner of 10 film festivals, including For Katrina, an MTV Network pilot, which won him the Breakthrough Filmmakers Award. Eli has written for publications ranging from the LA Times and Quillette to Commentary Magazine. I will just also add, it's not in Eli's bio, but Eli was on The Simpsons very recently in an episode of that. Were you playing yourself in that episode, or just?
Sister, the writer for the Simpsons.
Okay, yeah. So that's a very cool thing. I feel like you really made it in America if you get on. And then we are also joined by the star of the film and Eli's father, Shelby Steele. Shelby is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. Shelby has never shied away from controversy when it comes to race in America. This documentary, What Killed Michael Brown, promises a subtle critique, you've seen it already, punctuated by powerful insight. In 2006, Steele received the Bradley Prize for his contributions to the study of race in America. In 2004, he was awarded the National Humanities Medal. In 1991, his work on the documentary 7 Days in Bensonhurst was recognized with an Emmy Award and 2 awards for television documentary writing from the Writers Guild Award and the San Francisco Film Festival Award. His documentary Jefferson's Blood for PBS Frontline was also critically acclaimed, and he has written 5 books, including White Guilt and The Content of Our Character, which received the National Book Critics Circle Award. I've read White Guilt. It is a fantastic book, and for anybody who likes the film, I would highly recommend they check that out, or one of Shelby's many other books. And with that, I will kick it off to you two.
Hey everybody, so I think the idea for here is that we're going to have a conversation. It's not too often they get my father in the hot seat. So I'm going to ask him some questions and start a conversation. And while he's talking, I'll be looking at the question. So if you can put them in the Q&A or in the chat, that'd be great. And I will just jump to them when we have a chance. Okay, so you obviously, through your lifetime, being born in the 1940s to today, you have a very unique perspective on race in America, especially liberalism, the arc of it. And I kind of want to, we kind of see your point of view with liberalism in What Killed Michael Brown. But as a child, growing up, part of core, being part of the civil rights movement, what did liberalism mean to you as a child or a young adult?
Well, when I was growing up, and obviously you're right, the family history there. We were very much involved in the civil rights movement and so forth. Liberalism, from a sort of a political point of view, was the ideology that the civil rights movement was really founded on. It was then and remains today my guiding light, classic liberalism, the idea of free individuals in an open society where people can say and say at any rate whatever it is that they think, and do so freely without being pushed one way or another politically. So it's liberalism was popular at that moment in the 1950s because it gave room for civil rights. It gave room in American life for civil rights to tackle race. Race had always been the place at which, the barrier at which goodwill, liberalism, and the American Constitution collapsed. And one of the important functions of the civil rights movement was to bring liberalism back into legitimacy and credibility. And Martin Luther King certainly embodied that kind of liberalism, that we as Americans, what was important was our character more than the content of our character was the main defining ideal that liberalism was after. I still subscribe today to that point of view. I see my collective, my group identity, for example, as an American, I base it in my citizenship, not in my race. Race is not relevant. What's important to me is that I was born and raised an American citizen, and shaped by the ideals of freedom and possibility, and that I could function really as an individual, more than just as a member of a tribe, a race, a religion, a group of some kind. I could function just as me, and the society would not only tolerate it, but in many ways celebrate it. So it was that kind of liberalism, I think, that made America the greatest nation we've yet seen.
Yeah, it's very interesting because America is like the first, like part of the American experiment is that we should be individual, that we have the chance to become who we want to be. And, obviously, slavery's degradation betrayed that because it locked us into this race box. And it's that you must behave according to your race. So if you're Black, you must behave in a certain way. If you're white, you must behave in a certain way. So obviously, liberalism was the return to the individual.
Right. Yes. I think one of the tragic, tragic may be too, well, no, it's not. One of the terrible things that happened in the 1950s is, we as classic liberals, I fell for it, most people did, is that we thought the important way to move ahead in race, regarding race in American life, that the important way to do that was to focus on one's collective identity. And we began to think in terms of race particularly, because obviously race is the big crisis of American history. And we began to think that our entitlement as citizens of America had to do with our race, our collective group identity. It got us nowhere. Today, it seems to me that liberalism has fallen back on the bad habit of judging people and sort of squeezing people into groups, and from where they betray their individuality, and they betray what it is they really have to offer us. So I think that's what one of the corruptions is that our politics, liberal politics in the 60s, began to see Black people as simply iconic victims of racism, rather than as individual human beings, individual citizens of a great society. And they imposed on classic liberalism the idea that the group was more important than the individual, and that one should rest one's fate in one's group membership. Well, you know, I thought we were going to move away from that for a minute, but we've fallen right back into it today. Liberalism is entirely based on this. One of the saddest days I've ever had was a few weeks ago, really, of the President of the United States selecting not an individual, but a woman and a Black. What's the difference between that and what the slave owner said? I'm going to make you a slave because you're Black. You belong to this group. We go by groups. Too bad you ended up in the one that in the slave group. Well, here's now a woman being put on the Supreme Court of the United States. We don't really know what her merit is. We don't know how she may be the most brilliant justice whoever lives. I wish her well in any case, because she is there now. But you can't. Liberalism keeps, in the name of making race better, it keeps undermining it. It keeps using it against the individual, diminishing the importance of the individual, curbing the freedom of the individual. If you're a white male, no, don't bother applying to the Supreme Court. Well, the race continues, therefore, I think, to be the tragedy of American life. We simply can't get beyond it. My philosophy is that race is race is a human problem. It's a problem that human beings have. It's not a problem that Black people have, or that Asian people have, or that white people have. It's a problem that human beings have. We're all human. We're all essentially, inherently the same, like it or not. And when we use race in public policy, in our public life, whenever we use race, it is a poison. It takes us away from democracy, from the sacredness of the individual, and puts us back in that old evil place where group identity is all. Group identity is the important thing. So race continues to be a poison in American life that we struggle with different times in different ways, but it's never good. It never gets us anywhere.
So speaking of that, I kind of maybe do like two more questions that will open it up. So in what killed Michael Brown, we see you as part of the bad part of liberalism that you're talking about. So even in your own life, you probably say I was the individual, and then you got swept up in the Black Power movement, and so even you kind of maybe betrayed your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know all about it. I know it intimately.
So maybe tell the story. I think one of the more fascinating stories, and I think that people don't know this about you, is that you in the late 70s, the early 80s, were among the first to put like Black Studies department into colleges across America. Maybe talk about that, and then how you came to realize that might not be the best thing and why.
Let me do that, but let me first of all, let let me back up for a minute, and then you keep that question in mind, because I want to come to it, but I want to lay a little background first. The problem of racial oppression, of racism, the idea that we can, and I grew up in segregated America where racism determined every aspect of my life. What school I went to, whether I could get a paper route that wasn't because the whites didn't want black kids riding their bike through the neighborhood, on and on and on. Every day, everything was race, was repression. The civil rights movement overcame that. It defeated the legitimacy of racism. It said racism is anti-democratic, anti-liberal, and evil. It is always designed to oppress people. And so in a sense, Black America in the mid-60s, 64 Civil Rights Bill, good example. Suddenly, after 4 centuries of horrific oppression, we were free. And we remain a free people to this day. The idea that we are not free is no longer, it's just simply not true. Our freedom is enforceable by the letter of the law. And one of the tragedies of Black American life is that when we won that freedom, to put it bluntly, it scared the hell out of us. We had experience with every aspect of the human condition. From dark to light, we had experience of it. We learned to negotiate, learned to adapt, so forth. We had never been in freedom. And freedom says, okay, your life's in your hands. Well, we didn't, we had experience with everything but that. It scared the hell out of us. I think the biggest problem Black America has is freedom, not racism. Racism, we defeated racism soundly in the 60s. There are no serious people walking around American life demanding that we resegregate. It's over with. And thank God. But it's frightening because with freedom comes a much higher level of responsibility. To take charge of your life is always been the great challenge of American life. We were prevented from that challenge for centuries. Now we're not. Now we are free. You can be Black and become the president of the United States. Well, wow. But again, that's a frightening thing. So what happens when a group comes out of oppression into freedom for the first time? Always, always, always. What happens is the group goes into denial. Denial that covers over our fear because we don't know how to handle freedom. And so we say one thing and cleave to it no matter what. We say, the truth is, we're not free. Racism is around every corner. I am victimized by it here and victimized by it there. It constrains and constricts my life. Well, and I was that person who said those things. And what I was doing to myself was covering over this reality, this anxiety. Like, what do I do now? How do I move forward in American life? And so again, it's my point to these days is that the great challenge for us as Black Americans is to become individuals and embrace and learn how to prepare ourselves to move into the modern world fully and competitively, so that we put ourselves on the same ground as others. Anything else is a way. So today you say, well, it's important for Blacks to learn about their identity, and I don't disagree with that. That's an admirable goal. I think everybody should be aware of what they came from. It does not remove your obligation to make decisions about your life on your own, to learn to live in freedom, to prepare yourself, to train yourself, educate yourself, develop levels of skill that enable you to be successful in a free society where we all have to compete. That, it seems to me, again, that's the backdrop of everything else, is the idea that, hey, knock, knock, hello, we are free. We're free. What a joy, because God knows, I remember when we weren't. You know, the park down the street had a swimming pool. Black kids could only swim in it after 7 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. The rest of the time was open to white kids only. I couldn't caddy on a golf course, couldn't work in a restaurant, couldn't, on and on and on. My school was completely segregated. It ended up eventually being the first desegregation lawsuit of the North. Coolidge School, just off the south side of Chicago. Everything was segregated. Everything was racial. Race was your fate, and the point is that glory be to, we are free today and have been now for decades. We've been free. Does that mean there's no more racism in the world? There's no more segregation? I wish it did, but it doesn't. These evils continue to plague the human communities. And God knows they very likely will continue. I can't imagine a world without evil in it. The point is, we broke this one. We broke it. We're free. And it no longer has that capacity to do. What a wonderful human evolution Black America has given to America. We've shown how far you need to go and must go in order to be free. We're going to, as history moves on, we're going to be seeing here, after 4 centuries of oppression, we're going to live up to our freedom by taking responsibility for ourselves. Let's stop thinking that if we don't get, if the government doesn't give us another social program or some other kind of break, that we're going to perish. We need to take charge of our lives in a way where we are not dependent on the government, where we are not dependent on it. We're dependent on ourselves.
If you think there are other groups, different perspective, other groups that have been, in slavery, like the Jewish people with Moses, they did the same thing. So it's sort of a universal condition where, people come out, even somebody who's in prison, who's a prisoner and knows the prison life, sometimes they come out, they commit a crime, go right back into prison. So it's not, I'm just showing there's a universal human condition.
Yes. The first thing we did was, what we've done recently to go backwards is create systemic racism. We say this racism is not, it oppresses us, is not only here and there, it's systemic racism. It's worse than when we actually really were oppressed. We deny and make up stories, make up visions of ourselves as victims, because then we think we'll get justice from white people, from white America, that they will they will then, in order to redeem themselves, they have to begin to give us things. That is where modern liberalism has become the new racism, has become the enemy of Black people. Today's liberals want to make us into their slaves.
Well, yeah, the thing with another point that they should look at is, the Malcolm X view, which is the worst thing you do is tie your faith to another race. So that's another mistake that we made. I do kind of want to point out.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that. I love that.
Well, I mean, it's just because, me, I'm, being born deaf. I could very easily go into my deaf identity. I could blame my deafness. I have it, it's right there. I could even stop everything and go on disability and live the rest of my life on disability. I mean, that door is right there. But then you lose everything. You lose yourself. You just
lose yourself. You lose everything. You've done a good job of doing that.
Yeah. And I do know some deaf people. They did take them out, and to the credit, they got out and they made good life for themselves. They basically bought a house in Las Vegas. But I remember him when he was in Hollywood, just living off the government, playing games online all day because he was deaf. He had that ability. But then he woke up one day and said, wait a minute, why am I doing that? Why am I allowing my deafness to dominate my life? The other thing that I would mention is, oh geez, I forgot. Keep my mind. Shelby.
Well, one of the things that the points that I think we're both making, anytime you see people emphasizing identity as a way for a group to get ahead, Black power, again, I grew up I went through that whole movement. If we just unify, and if we stop being ashamed of ourselves as Blacks and be proud, Black is beautiful and Black and proud and so forth. And if we sense that one of us is somehow betraying the race, is hanging around with white people, God forbid, then they're pushed out of the group. They're Uncle Toms. And so we enforce the narrow-mindedness of identity by telling the lie that it's what will get us ahead. It's what will bring us. And so anytime I hear anytime you hear the deaf person that you're talking about, God bless them. They discovered they're going to have a great life because they're going to take responsibility, whatever it is, good, bad, or otherwise. They can know that they themselves are the ones who did what human beings in a sense are obligated to do, make a good life.
Yeah, I mean, he made a life for himself. I do want to point out that one thing that's interesting about what killed Michael Brown and the whole culture that we're in today is that in What Killed Michael Brown, we were showing a different version of liberalism, sort of what we see from the Black side of the coin in a way. I think that was important because I think that gets lost in the conversation today. Is that there's an idea that we can redeem liberalism or left or whatever you call. Maybe that's possible, but for me, that's not the real point. The real point is that we have the values, we have the American values. So the whatever side is on the American values, life, pursuit of happiness, all about equality, individuality, whatever politics around that, that's where I am. And so I think what we were trying to do though was to say, hey, liberalism may have caused a lot of the problem. The betrayal of liberalism may have caused a lot of the problem in today's world, but it really has affected the Black community, especially the Black underclass, in ways that have been almost, I mean, you never want to stay and be permanent, but it has pushed them to the point where they have generation upon generation upon generation learning a certain way of life that is so divorced from the way mainstream America lived their life. Of course, after they, Black people statistics have made the most progress of any group, which proves that they're more than capable. But there has been that Black underclass that just sticks there and does not move. And I think that's what we were trying to show in Rick Hill, Michael Brown. The people are opening up to question. I want to point out that we have this whole cancel culture thing going on today, where we see people be canceled left and right. And but you were canceled way back, 1990, 1989. Thomas Sowell was canceled even before that. So as Black people, why were you canceled? What was the reason that you betrayed the corrupt liberalism that was in power by speaking your mind? Was that the issue?
Yes. Black and white America, and again, sometimes we overlook the role of whites. Whites are very important in this whole issue, this whole matter, because whites live under this pressure of stigmatization, of stigmatized, in which they are stigmatized, with the evil that America engaged in for so long, for 4 centuries. And so that stigma is what drives white liberals to do all sorts of, put up BLM signs out in their front yard, and also anything to advertise and say, I'm not like that, I'm not a racist. That's other whites, but it's not me. And so because when they see Blacks having difficulty, their angle is, rather than if it was just Blacks and Blacks would say, okay, you're having difficulty, now fix it, get busy, figure out how to overcome that problem, whatever it may be. But because whites are driving a lot of the social reform and so forth of the last 60, 70 years, the social reform has been more about helping whites defend against the stigma of being racist than about helping Black people develop. How do you come out of 4 centuries of rank oppression without needing development? You need development. You've been oppressed. And so what we've had now, affirmative action, school, but trillions of dollars have gone into developing going into social reform and so forth. And of course, none of it has ever worked. Blacks are farther behind whites today by almost every socioeconomic measure than they were back in the 1950s, when there was no attempt on the part of America to intervene on their behalf. So we just, whites in that sense have become the enablers of Black weakness, of Black avoidance. They say to us, for example, essentially, you are inferior. We're sorry, we did oppress you, but now we are going to lift you back up. We're going to help you rise and overcome those deficits that oppression built into you.
Yeah.
We, white people,
That's
Lyndon
where-
Johnson, Great Society, War on Poverty, school busing. He's going to do it. He's going to make you equal to other people. What does he really do? He hooks you like a junkie. He said, you can't make it without me.
Well, I think that's
He does the worst, the cruelest thing. The social reform that's come out of the United States government is regarding race is the cruelest thing imaginable. And has it protected whites against the stigma of being seen as racist? No. And for the most part, they just continue. So here's Black Lives Matter. When the riots 2 summers ago, on the basis of that, they raised over $100 million. That's white guilt money.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, none of that money.
And what is it going to do to lift Black people up, to have them, because their problem with Blacks we have is that we're underdeveloped. We have not taken our development seriously enough. And so we're not competitive in many areas where we should be.
Yes.
We
And,
keep saying, well, it's racism, systemic racism, all of these disparities and so forth between Blacks and whites. That's all due to systemic racism. No, it's not. It's due to our fear of freedom.
so that's
Freedom is a judge, and it shows no mercy. We need to join with it rather than run from it.
well, that's
I'll shut up. No.
that's your answer, why you got canceled. You know, because the reason why you get canceled is because you're taking power away from the social reformers.
Right. They are now the political left in America, its power is based in the idea of racism.
Yeah,
Still.
that's the thing that. Well, there's one question here is these days. Given the evidence that you see, what's your most realistic prediction for the next 5 to 10 years regarding race in the United States? So I'll give a short answer that you should do it, but the obviously based on what you're saying is that we have to move beyond using race as some sort of short-term gain or some sort of instant gratification thing or some sort of political power, as you were talking about with Justice Brown and Biden. He was obviously using that as the power play, and that diminishes her in the public eye. You start fighting over her color rather than looking at her accomplishments, which obviously seem to be pretty significant. We may disagree with it, but you can't deny that she was a competent, functioning justice, the highest intellect in America. And the big question is, why do we have to cloud that with Black? Because we don't want a Supreme Court justice, or we certainly don't want a white Supreme Court justice going onto the court and acting like a white person. We want them going on acting as American. So I guess that would be, for me, that would be the biggest obstacle that we have to overcome, is the use of people's needs to use race for their own personal benefit, as opposed to doing the far more difficult work of seeing what people around you truly need. You know, in California.
Yes, it keeps us. One test of the American character is going to be whether or not this country can stand up and look at the people it once victimized and say, you're now on your own. God bless you. We believe in you. We know you can do it. We know you can be competitive. You can win your way onto the Supreme Court of the United States through merit. And you should get credit for doing so. Instead, today, America's not that. We don't have that character, that strength of character. We won't. We'll be called racist, and we don't want to endure that. Why bother? It's not my problem anyway. On and on. What Blacks need to understand, what is painful for me to have to come to understand, you get what you put in. You're going to be as free as you earn, and no freer, and nobody else can do it for you. Where have you ever seen in human history one group of people lift up another? Never. And it won't happen here. We, as Blacks, we have to lift ourselves up. And we can do it, and I have every faith that we can do it. And I loathe what the President of the United States did. He humiliated Black people. And he should be held accountable for that. This poor woman, but quite beyond her. This is a judgment on that we're still in the hand, we're still dependents of the white man. We don't get anything he doesn't give to us. And isn't he wonderful and grand because he throws us a nickel or a dime? I believe in Frederick Douglass. I'm quoted every time I get a chance. We ask him after the Civil War what we should do about the Blacks that we've just set free. And his answer was, leave us alone. Until we take our own freedom, why is America the greatest country in the world? Because they said, the founding fathers, God bless them, said, oh, no, we are not going to be a colony of Britain. We're going to be our own nation. And they went to war and they fought for 9 years. They took every kind of casualty. They paid for it. Now, God knows they made profound mistakes. They had slaves, and we can hold that against them all we want. What is important to me is that they made the greatest country in the world. Nothing is perfect. Nothing works out in a perfect, smooth way in this life. But they were on the right page. They were on the right side, and glory to them. America is from one end of this world to the other admired singularly, because we had, well, as Black Americans, we're blessed with that heritage. That's our heritage too. We simply have to grab it, take it. And instead of looking for systemic racism.
Yeah.
That, to use the only correct word, ugly as it may be, that's cowardly. And those are the terms bigger than me or you or anybody else. That's just the way the world works. You don't get something for nothing.
So you have another question. The documentary mentioned Reborn. That didn't work. What steps of Reborn would you recommend to help the Black community?
None.
Well, I would say one thing.
I myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for you, yes. I mean, you're talking more about the Great Society programs, war on poverty, all of that stuff, or even just the general white savior type of philosophy. But in what's fascinating is that, they spend a lot of time in the South Side of Chicago. This year, the school that was down the block had 4% proficiency in math. 6% proficiency in reading. And so the surprising thing to me is, okay, yes, we need equality of schools. In other words, every school should be equipped the same way. But what's fascinating is that you have this, staunchly Democrat city. Everything is, these people know what's going on down there? These people in power, Chicago is one of the richest cities in the world. Yet they do nothing. They do nothing. They, I sat in a town hall meeting with Mayor Lightfoot, and what was fascinating was they would blame me white supremacy. They would blame me lack of equity. They would blame me all of these things. And just standing there going, okay, you have a school. They have 4%, 6% proficiency. These children do not have a chance to survive. They can't break the generational curse of poverty, or dependency, or whatever it is. Yet the power of the be, who know that, do nothing.
Yep,
Your mother,
that's right.
your mother and your father, and the neighbors. You know, I always told her, you're talking about maybe 5 miles south of where the school is.
Mhm.
They kids out of school for an entire year. They shut it down. They had with the DOJ come in, launch a federal investigation. My question is, okay, we have the problem, and on that point, Roland Breyer did a whole study. I think he's to be on tomorrow night here, where he said, no, good schools is the answer. Good schools work better than any social program. All you need a good school, people that believe in the children.
God bless him. He's
And show my.
see, that's a man. That's a strong. That's the kind. Those are the kind of people that make change. That change things for the good.
Yeah.
You know, God bless him.
And to the question that would be is, okay, we know what the answer is. You should put a BLM sign on your front yard. And in Chicago, in the North Side, where the wealthy people live, the BLM signs everywhere. In the South Side, on the South Side, there's not one BLM sign, not one. Not one person BLM ever comes into the South Side.
America continues to think that if they make a gesture, whites make a gesture, BLM signs and so forth, that means something. Again, it doesn't mean anything. It simply points to the fact that we've had this sick symbiotic relationship between blacks and whites, where a small group of blacks called the grievance elite, they're called, who shake down white people for money, for programs, for all sorts, for diversity this and inclusiveness that. Completely empty, bogus ideas that have nothing to do with the development of skills, with the development of businesses, with becoming educated, highly skilled, able to function at the highest level in American life. That's where we have to go. But it gets corrupted. But again, white liberalism today, because it's this shallow, is a continuation of oppression. It keeps sending this signal to black people that you can't do it on your own. I'm at a point where it's hard to simply take it. You know, you can complain only so much. I have one of the things that seems to me to be very good today is you see a lot of white parents with critical race theory coming ahead of school board meeting, this phenomenon of white parents now upset over what their children are being taught, and which is all about identity and groups and so forth. I hope these people thrive and continue, and they're true Americans. But most of all, I hope that we as blacks, and I think this is beginning to happen. We're beginning to open our view and see that simply protesting white people, we've done that, it's over with. That we've got to, at this point, we've got to really focus hard on developing ourselves, on competing, not just with other minority groups, but competing with other Americans, joining America no matter what it once did to us. Join it now. Well, you forgive it or don't forgive it, join it, become a part of it, prepare yourself to thrive in it. Focus entirely on education and on development that we initiate. And we stop looking. So we're constantly not getting what we want from the government. Well, then why do we keep looking for the government to do this and that? Because we're afraid. We're afraid of freedom. Freedom passes judgment on it. Freedom sounds like me asking you why you don't do better.
Yeah. This is a question that's sort of, I think it's more about the documentary. So the question is about the eyewitnesses. Sure, it's the relation you're talking about, but in Ferguson. And these days that the documentary, I think the question, well, I don't know if the question right, is the documentary referencing alleged eyewitnesses whose the microgram pre-hand up. Yeah, the documentary seems to be saying that there's no evidence that the police were wrong. Well, there was Dorian Johnson, who was the main witness. He was the one that started the whole hand up, the shoot. There was another person behind him who helped start the movement. That witness was dismissed by the Department of Justice as not credible. So if you read the DOJ report on Ferguson, you should read his transcript, so you should see how his story just kind of falls apart. There was even one part where he was behind the car. There was cars in the street. We don't show that in the film because it's a little too complicated, but there were cars in the street. He was behind the car. So the question is, did he see everything? We don't know. So what we did was what we wanted to do was give the other witnesses a voice that they never had. These witnesses were not interviewed by anybody. They were not, their testimony was completely ignored. And so while we could the alleged eyewitness testimony more directly addressed, she reviewed it. Well, so basically that why didn't the public review Dorian Johnson, the one that started the whole hand up the shoot narrative? Well, obviously, because she reviewed that witness, you would have changed the entire narrative. You have taken that last piece that they had to continue that narrative because the autopsy report showed that he was not shot in the back. So basically, all they had left was this one guy. So that's actually a very disturbing thing to think about, that the entire United States of America did not look for those other witnesses, that they gave a lot of credibility to this witness. And that's a big part of why we made the film. Well, if we really wanted to get those witnesses, and here's another thing that I've never told this story before, but we tried to get the actual deposition of the witnesses. We said that we will blur the faces out, or either it was on video, or we will alter the voice, it was audio. We were not allowed to do that. We went all the way up to the top of the Missouri government to try to get somebody to force them to give us the tapes. And so that kind of shows you how powerful that narrative is. Not only that, if you're Black and you live in that neighborhood and you are a witness and you are going to go against the narrative, this is just this shit. So you should see the level of trying to control the narrative on every aspect. And that's the only reason why Ferguson was able to just take off and create two narratives. One which was the narrative that Michael Brown was executed, and the other one was, no, that didn't happen. That's not true. Whether it was and so forth. And so that's what, I mean, that's what really drew us into that film was, you know, the differences between the witnesses. This is sort of a microcosm for the larger picture.
Mhm. Yep, that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, I'll probably find another question. There's another one that stays, today's days, we made a claim that welfare was the major undoing of the Black community. Correlation was demonstrated, but not causation, I think. I would have liked to see that demonstrated. She would like to see that we demonstrated causation as opposed to correlation of what happened in the Black community. I mean, we're kind of running out of time, but maybe I'll answer very shortly. There's many studies out there, The thing though is that we are dealing with human beings. So it's very difficult. Well, back up for 1 second. In social work, which is a big part of America, we had the Moynihan report that came out in the 60s. And the Daniel Moynihan report basically said the Black family is in trouble. That, and there's such a negative backlash to that. Orlando Patterson writes about that. And there's a huge backlash pointing the finger at Black people. That we literally have not really had much people looking very honestly at the situation. We keep missing the problem. Like I was talking about earlier, we have Bailey School. I live in California. We have, which I can't remember the accurate number, but it's something like less than 50% of Black in 3rd grade or 4th grade across the entire state, all income level, reading at grade level. That's in 2022.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So I mean, there's a lot of data out there, and but the only answer, as we know, and we've met so many of these people, are the Black individual who said, I did not want to become that person. I did not want to become a statistic. So I took my own life into my hand. Now look at me. I drive a Mercedes. I'm from the south side of Chicago. I'm from Overtown, Miami. I'm from the bad neighborhood in Houston. You know, we have people that die in our own family. Who did that? And so that goes back to your point of the individual is really, I mean, yes, people, I guess my way of thinking is that the individual, if the individual is able to develop themselves, even unfair as the war may be, they can find a way. I mean, that's the American story. Then once they start on that path, people will come forward. I mean, people are dying to help them, and they can help them in the right way.
Yes, I think there's one key to the whole thing that changes it around. What is important, what should be important if you want to conduct social reform in the Black community, whatever level, however, the most important thing is what you ask of the people you want to help. You got to ask a lot. And you have to lead with that. And you have to make it clear that they're responsible for fulfilling that ask. That is the way the world works. You pay for what you get. And if I ask something from you, then you've got to live up to that. You've got to make decisions that maybe scare you. They will scare you, but you got to make them anyway. You have to be with people who support you in that, and you have to take that responsibility and march forward. That's where we're at. And again, the idea that you just give, what we've done now for 50 years, we just give. We give more welfare payments. We give, again, all sorts of school busing, for integration, all kind. What I mean, we'd be here all day talking about the list of things that the Great Society did for Black people, the public housing, none of which worked. We show the whole public housing story, I think, very well in this film. It's heartbreaking to see people who've finally hit freedom after 4 centuries sell themselves out rather than move forward into this great society. No matter what whether there's some racism in there or not, move forward. Is racism an excuse for not using the freedom you have? Do we have to have, I see things now on college campuses, affinity dorms. Blacks get to live with other, what kind of, do you understand how weak that makes us look?
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes it, you make the race look like weaklings who can't do anything if the government doesn't give them $1 trillion. Or white people don't do something. White people have to struggle with the morality of American history. Black people have to struggle with their underdevelopment. Are we going to just have a snap your finger, get rid of the residue of all of that history? No. We have to be realistic and down on the ground, work our way through it. We can do that. We're a great people. This is the greatest nation there ever was. I'm more convinced of that every single day. And I was way at the far left other extreme. Believed America was the very essence of irresponsibility. That the corporate world was terrible. That on and on. No, it's a world. It's a society with a heck of a lot of possibility, and we have to go for that possibility, develop it. And if you want to engage in helping, giving social programs to people, make sure you ask something from them. Yeah. Ask a lot. Yeah. Ask a lot, because we're far behind in many ways. When you look at the 12 Black boys in the state of California in the 12th grade read at an 8th grade level. What are you going to do in American life reading at an 8th grade level?
Yeah.
And yet we people who say that, we condemn as traitors and as evil and unsympathetic, and enough sympathy, enough empathy. An ask, not a demand, an ask. Show respect. And the ask in itself shows respect. And the Black can hold his head up and move forward. And say, I'll meet your ask and then some. That's where race relations have to go at this point. We don't have any, the old problems, racism, are gone. I don't run into racism, and I grew up in it, I know what it is. It's nothing out here now. It's something white liberals keep alive so they can buy BLM signs.
Yeah, I think that basically we're kind of wrapping up, but basically, we as a society really needs to value freedom over race. We really need to bring other, freedom, individualism back to the forefront. And
right. And not make excuses for that. Yeah. We need to just do it now. It's time to move. Nobody can help us anymore. It's obvious. Yeah. We've come to the end of the line in that sense.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna wrap up. But I do want to thank everybody for taking the time to join in and for watching the film. It means a lot to us because we know that we made a controversial film, and it's something that's very different for other people. But we really appreciate you taking the time to watch that film and keep an open mind, and hopefully show you something. So thank you, and thank you for taking part of this.